I said I wanted orange juice, not water. Can't you understand English? The man's voice echoed through the crowded terminal of Charles de Gaulle Airport, drawing irritated glances from weary travelers. At Gate 12, the tension was thick, and right at the center of it stood Clara Evans, a young waitress with tired eyes and trembling hands. Her apron was stained from hours of serving impatient passengers, but she forced a polite smile anyway. Before she could respond, her gaze shifted to the corner of the waiting area, where a little boy sat alone on the floor, his tiny fingers moving in the air, forming shapes only a few would recognize. He was signing desperately, but no one seemed to care. Before we continue, Clara said softly, trying to calm the man, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. She turned her attention back to the child. The boy couldn't have been more than 7. His brown curls were messy, his backpack too heavy for his small shoulders. A toy airplane rested beside him. His lips moved silently, "Mama," but his mother was nowhere in sight. People walked around him, stepping over his little world as if he were invisible. Clara's heart twisted. She recognized that kind of loneliness. She'd felt it herself, years ago, in another airport, waiting for a father who never showed up. "Excuse me," she said, gently moving past a businessman glued to his phone. "Is this anyone's child?" No one answered. Not one person lifted their eyes. The boy noticed her then, cautious, uncertain. He signed again, hands shaking slightly. Clara didn't understand every sign, but she caught one word: help. She knelt beside him, smiling. "Hey there, my name's Clara." She pointed to her chest, "Clara." The boy hesitated, then signed back, "Leo." Clara felt a rush of warmth. She had once taken a basic sign language class during high school, long before life forced her into waitressing and survival mode. She tried to recall the signs. "Are you lost? Where's your mum?" Leo's eyes filled with tears. He looked toward the check-in counters, then back at her, shaking his head. That's when a security officer approached. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" Clara stood quickly. "This boy seems to be lost. He can't hear. I think he's trying to find his mother." The officer barely glanced at Leo. "We'll handle it." His tone was dismissive, mechanical. He reached for his radio, already turning away. But Leo flinched, backing up against the wall. His hands moved faster. "No, no, no!" Clara knelt again. "It's okay, Leo. I'm not leaving you. Okay? I promise." For the first time, the boy smiled faintly. And in that moment, amidst the chaos of boarding calls and rolling suitcases, Clara made a silent vow. She wouldn't let this child disappear into the noise of indifference. What she didn't know was that helping him would uncover a secret that would change both of their lives forever. Clara had promised Leo she wouldn't leave him. The boy's faint smile still lingered, fragile yet full of trust, the kind of trust only a child could give a stranger in the middle of chaos. The airport buzzed with motion and noise. Announcements echoed in multiple languages, and the scent of coffee and jet fuel mingled in the air. Yet for Clara, the world had narrowed to one small corner, just her and Leo. The security officer walked away, muttering into his radio, uninterested. Clara sighed, biting her lip. "They're not going to look for her properly," she whispered. "But I will." She reached for Leo's hand. He hesitated, then placed his small fingers in hers. They were trembling, not from fear alone, but exhaustion. "Let's go find your mom, okay?" she said, articulating each word clearly, hoping he could read her lips. He nodded slowly. As they walked, Clara tried to recall everything she'd learned about sign language years ago. Her memory was rusty, but she remembered enough to communicate simple things. "You okay? Hungry? Bathroom?" Leo shook his head at each, then pointed toward the large glass window overlooking the runway. A plane was taking off, Air France, bound for New York. His eyes followed it desperately. Clara realized his mother might have been on that flight. "No," she murmured, her heart sinking. "She wouldn't just leave you here." But deep down, she wasn't sure. At the airport cafe, her manager, Rick Donovan, was waiting. His sharp suit and colder eyes reminded Clara of the life she could never escape. Rules, shifts, and silent suffering. "Clara!" he barked, glancing at the boy. "What's this? You're supposed to be covering table 14, not babysitting." "He's lost, Rick. He can't hear. No one's helping him." Rick folded his arms. "Then call security. That's not your job." Clara's voice trembled but didn't break. "They already came. They don't care. He's terrified." Rick sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You always get too involved. Remember last month, the old woman who missed her flight? You stayed 3 hours after your shift. You think this airport's a charity." Leo looked up at Clara, his eyes wide with confusion. She gave him a reassuring smile, then faced Rick again. "Maybe it should be," she said quietly. Rick's jaw tightened. "You're done for the day. Clock out." But Clara didn't move. "Not until I find his mother." Rick's face hardened, but before he could reply, a woman's frantic voice cut through the noise. "Leo!" Clara spun around. A woman in her 30s came running, her suitcase dragging behind her. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying. Leo gasped, dropped his toy plane, and ran toward her. Clara smiled, relief flooding her chest, until she saw the way the woman froze halfway. She didn't run to embrace her son. She looked afraid. "Ma'am," Clara said, approaching slowly, "is this your child?" The woman nodded, breathing hard. Yes, he's mine." Her hand shook as she pulled Leo close, but her eyes darted nervously around as if searching for someone. Then, softly, she whispered, "Please, don't tell anyone you saw us." Clara blinked. "What? Why?" The woman's lips trembled. "Because we're not supposed to be here." And just like that, the relief that had washed over Clara turned into unease. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and she could feel it in her bones. Before she could ask more, the woman grabbed Leo's hand and began to walk quickly toward the far exit, but Leo looked back over his shoulder, signing one word to Clara as tears filled his eyes: "Help!" And Clara knew. This wasn't over. Leo looked back as his mother dragged him through the crowded terminal, his small hand waving frantically toward Clara. His lips formed the silent word again: "Help!" Clara stood frozen for a moment, her heart hammering in her chest. Something about the woman's eyes, the trembling in her voice, the urgency of her steps. None of it matched a simple reunion. This wasn't a lost child being found. This was someone running from something. She followed them, keeping her distance. The airport was massive, a maze of glossy floors and echoing announcements, but she could spot Leo's little backpack, bright blue with cartoon clouds, bobbing above the crowd. "Clara, where are you going?" Rick's voice thundered from behind her, but she didn't turn back, not this time. She had promised Leo. The woman reached the far end of the terminal, where a maintenance door stood half open. No passengers were supposed to go that way. Clara quickened her pace. "Ma'am," she called out, "wait." The woman froze. Leo looked up at her, confused. When Clara finally caught up, she could see the tears glistening on the woman's cheeks. "Please," Clara said softly, "I'm not here to hurt you. But your son is scared. He needs to know what's happening." The woman hesitated, then whispered, "You don't understand. If they find us, they'll take him away." Clara's breath caught. "Who?" "The embassy. My husband. He's powerful and dangerous." She looked around, as if afraid the walls could hear her. "He's been trying to get custody of Leo, but not because he loves him. Because he doesn't want the world to know his son is deaf. Clara's stomach turned. That's insane. The woman nodded, trembling. He said Leo would embarrass him, that a politician can't have a defective child. Her voice cracked on the last word. So I ran. I got fake papers. We were supposed to leave for Canada today, but I missed the flight when Leo got lost. If security finds us, they'll call immigration, and then it's over. Clara took a deep breath, trying to process everything. The airport noise felt distant now, just the pounding of her own heartbeat and the hum of tragedy unfolding. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then we'll think of something. But hiding here isn't safe." The woman looked at her in disbelief. "Why are you helping us?" Clara hesitated, glancing down at Leo. "Because once, someone helped me when no one else would." Leo tugged at his mother's sleeve and signed something quickly. The woman's expression softened, and she translated, "He says he trusts you." The words hit Clara like a wave. She crouched beside Leo, smiling gently. "Then we'll stick together, okay?" He nodded, eyes shining. But before Clara could speak again, a voice rang out from the terminal, a firm, commanding tone. "Security check! Everyone step away from the restricted area." 3 uniformed officers were walking toward them, scanning the crowd. Clara's pulse spiked. The woman's face went pale. "They're looking for us," she whispered. Clara thought fast. She grabbed Leo's backpack and turned to the woman. "Follow my lead, now!" They slipped through the maintenance door, the metal hinges squealing softly. Inside was a narrow corridor filled with cleaning carts and flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled of detergent and fear. Clara led them through the passage until they reached a service elevator. "We'll go to the lower level. Baggage handling. No one checks there." As the elevator doors closed, the woman looked at her, eyes full of disbelief and gratitude. "You're risking your job for strangers." Clara gave a faint smile. "Jobs can be replaced. People can't." The elevator descended with a soft rumble, and for a brief moment, silence wrapped around them. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and that whatever they were running from was already catching up. The elevator descended with a low rumble, and for a brief moment, silence wrapped around them. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and that whatever they were running from was already catching up. The doors opened with a metallic hiss. The air below the main terminal was colder, heavier, filled with the echo of conveyor belts and the hum of unseen machinery. A maze of pipes and cargo carts stretched before them, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Leo clutched Clara's hand tightly. His small fingers trembled as he looked around, wide-eyed. The woman, who finally introduced herself as Elena Moreau, stayed close behind, her breath quick and shallow. "This way," Clara whispered, guiding them toward a row of stacked luggage containers. "We can hide for a moment." They crouched behind a set of crates. Clara could feel her pulse in her throat. Above them, she could hear faint footsteps, security officers moving through the corridors. Elena pressed a hand to her chest. "I can't keep running," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I thought we'd be safe once we got to Paris." Clara looked at her. "Why Paris?" Elena hesitated, then reached into her purse, pulling out a worn envelope. Inside was a passport and a photograph, a man in a crisp suit, shaking hands with government officials. "That's him," she said quietly. "My husband, Senator Julian Moreau. He's on his way here right now." Clara's stomach turned. "He's coming here, to this airport." Eleanor nodded. "He has contacts in French security. If they find Leo before we get out, he'll take him back to the US, and I'll never see my son again." For a moment, Clara couldn't speak. The weight of what she'd stepped into was crushing. This wasn't just about a lost boy anymore. It was about power, image, and a mother's desperate fight for her child's freedom. Leo tugged gently on her sleeve, signing something quickly. Elena translated, "He says he's not afraid." Because you're here. Clara swallowed hard, forcing a small smile. He's braver than most adults I know. They sat there in silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of the airport above. Then the sound of boots echoed closer. A man's voice, deep, authoritative, spoke in French, giving orders. Eleanor froze. "That's his bodyguard," she whispered. "They've found us." Clara looked around, searching for options. A maintenance tunnel stretched ahead, half-lit and dusty. "Come on, this way." They ran, the sound of footsteps growing louder behind them. Clara could hear someone shouting her name now. Clara Evans. Her blood ran cold. How did they know her name? She turned a corner and stopped. Standing there, blocking the path, was Rick Donovan, her manager. "Rick," she gasped. "What are you doing down here?" His expression was unreadable. "Clara, you've made a big mistake." Behind him stood two men in dark suits, one holding a photo of Elena, the other speaking into an earpiece. Clara's heart dropped. Rick wasn't just her manager, he was working with them. "Hand over the boy," Rick said quietly. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Clara stepped in front of Leo and Eleanor. "I'm not giving you anyone." Rick sighed. "You're a waitress, Clara. You make barely enough to survive. Don't throw your life away for people you just met." Her voice shook, but her resolve didn't. "Maybe that's exactly why I have to." Rick's eyes hardened. "Fine. Then you're fired." Clara almost laughed. "I think that's the least of my problems right now." She grabbed Eleanor's hand and turned to run. But suddenly, Leo broke free. He ran toward a luggage chute and climbed inside before anyone could stop him. "Leo!" Clara shouted. The men lunged forward, but Clara and Elena darted after the boy, diving into the narrow metal tunnel just as Rick yelled, "Don't let them get away!" The world spun, darkness, noise, the clatter of rolling bags. And then silence. When Clara finally opened her eyes, she found herself lying beside Leo and Eleanor in a dim storage area far beneath the airport. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Leo smiled faintly, holding up his hands to sign one word, "Safe." But Clara wasn't so sure. Somewhere above them, powerful people were hunting, and she had just made herself their newest enemy. Leo smiled faintly, holding up his hands to sign one word, "Safe." But Clara wasn't so sure. Somewhere above them, powerful people were hunting, and she had just made herself their newest enemy. The dim storage area smelled of oil and old leather. Conveyor belts creaked in the distance, carrying luggage that would soon board flights to cities they'd never see. Clara sat against a metal crate, catching her breath, while Eleanor wrapped her arms around Leo, whispering softly in French. Clara's hands were shaking. She wasn't used to danger. Her life was usually small, predictable, built around coffee stains and underpaid shifts. But now she was in the middle of something far bigger. Something that could ruin her, or worse. "Elena," she whispered, "we can't stay here. They'll check every part of this terminal." Elena nodded. "There's a service exit near the cargo docks. If we can reach it, there's a taxi company nearby. I have money hidden." Clara frowned. "You thought all of this through, didn't you?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. When you live with someone like him, you learn to plan your escape before he plans your life." Leo tugged at his mother's sleeve and signed again. Elena smiled faintly, translating, "He says we should trust you to lead the way." Clara looked at the boy, his courage, his innocence, his silent strength, and felt something shift inside her. She had spent her life feeling invisible, unimportant. But for the first time, someone was looking at her like she mattered. "All right," she said softly, "let's get you both out." They began to move through the narrow tunnels, guided by faint emergency lights. Clara could hear distant footsteps and voices. The search had begun again. She held her breath as they passed a vent, the sound of Rick's voice filtering through. "Evans is with them. Check every level," he ordered. "The senator wants the boy found before the next flight leaves." Eleanor stopped walking. "He's here," she whispered. "Julian's here." Clara peeked through the vent and froze. On the floor above, Senator Julian Moreau stood surrounded by security. He was impeccably dressed, tailored navy suit, polished shoes, and the controlled expression of a man used to getting his way. Beside him, Rick held a folder. "We've traced her access badge to this sector," he said. "It's only a matter of time." Julian's voice was cold and smooth. "Good. The woman is unstable. The boy belongs with me." Clara clenched her fists. "Belongs with him," she whispered to herself. "He's talking about his own son like a possession." She turned to Elena, who was trembling. "He won't stop," Elena said. "Even if we get out of here, he'll come after us." Clara took her hand. "Then we'll make sure he can't." "What do you mean?" Clara's eyes flicked to a small security camera in the corner of the tunnel. "We don't run anymore. We make the truth visible." Elena frowned, following her gaze. "You want to expose him?" "Yes," Clara said. "The whole airport is under surveillance. If we can get to the control room and pull the footage, people will see what he's done. The chase, the threats, everything. He can't cover that up." Elena hesitated, torn between fear and hope. That could ruin him. Clara met her eyes. "Good." They started moving again, quietly and quickly. The deeper they went, the more the tunnels twisted into unknown corners of the airport, until finally they reached a locked steel door marked "Surveillance Access, Staff Only." Clara tried the handle. Locked. She looked at Leo. "Think you can help me, buddy?" she asked with a smile. He grinned, pulling something from his pocket, a thin wire he'd been playing with earlier, part of a broken luggage tag. He slid it into the keyhole and twisted carefully. A soft click. The door opened. Clara blinked. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Leo beamed proudly. Inside, the surveillance room buzzed with monitors showing every corner of the airport. Clara began searching through the feeds until she spotted the moment. Rick handing a photo to the security guards, the senator ordering the search, the fear in Elena's face. "This is it," Clara whispered. "This will prove everything." But before she could download the footage, the door burst open. Rick stood there, gun drawn, his face shadowed with fury. "Step away from that computer, Clara," he said quietly. "You don't know what you're doing." Elena gasped, pulling Leo close. Clara turned slowly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," she said. "I'm making sure the world sees who you're protecting." Rick's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Clara saw a flicker of fear in them. Rick's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Clara saw a flicker of fear in them. The silence in the surveillance room was sharp enough to cut through. Only the low hum of the monitors filled the air, casting a blue glow across everyone's faces. "Rick," Clara said carefully, taking a step forward, "you don't have to do this. You think you're protecting your job, but you're protecting a monster." Rick's hand trembled slightly on the gun. "You don't understand, Clara. The senator, he owns people. If I don't deliver that kid, I'm finished." Clara's voice softened. "Then be finished, but don't help him destroy his own child." For a moment, Rick hesitated. His gaze shifted to Leo, who stood clutching his mother's hand, trembling but unflinching. The boy's eyes, clear, innocent, and defiant, met Rick's, and something cracked behind the man's stoic expression. Then, the sound of footsteps thundered from the hallway. Senator Moreau appeared, flanked by 2 guards. His composure was chilling. "Enough of this," he said coldly. "Miss Evans, you've caused quite the scene." Clara stepped in front of Elena and Leo. "You call this a scene? This is a mother protecting her son." Julian smirked. "A fugitive mother. And a deaf child who doesn't even understand what's happening. Do you think anyone will believe you over me? He turned to Rick. Take the boy. Rick froze. The gun lowered a few inches. Clara saw the hesitation and took her chance. She reached back, pressing the keyboard's command key. The monitors flickered, and suddenly, one of the cameras began streaming live onto the airport's main announcement screens. Julian's confident smirk faded. What did you do? Clara met his eyes, steady and fearless. You wanted an audience, Senator. Now you have one. Upstairs, in the terminal, hundreds of travelers stopped mid-stride as the big LED screens, usually displaying flight times, suddenly showed a live feed of the surveillance room. The crowd gasped as Julian's voice echoed through the speakers. Take the boy! Every word, every expression was broadcasted for all to see. Rick stepped back, panic flickering across his face. Elena held Leo tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Turn it off!" Julian barked at the guards. "Now!" But Clara had already yanked out the cables, locking the controls. "It's too late," she said. "The whole airport sees you for who you are." Julian lunged toward her, fury twisting his face, but Rick stepped between them, gun still in hand. "Stop!" Rick shouted. "It's over, Senator!" Julian turned on him. "You worthless!" But before he could finish, uniformed officers stormed into the room, real airport security this time. One of them held a radio crackling with reports. "We've received multiple complaints about a possible abduction. Suspects identified as Senator Moreau and associates." Julian's expression shattered. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The officer's tone was calm, but firm. "Yes, sir, and that's exactly why this footage is being preserved," Elena sobbed, collapsing to her knees as two guards restrained the senator. Rick dropped the gun, hands trembling, his eyes meeting Clara's. For the first time, he looked human. "I didn't know how far it would go," he muttered. Clara didn't answer. She just looked at Leo, safe, silent, but smiling. The boy reached up and touched his chest, then pointed at her. "Thank you." The officers led Julian away, his protests fading down the corridor. The chaos around them began to quiet. For the first time since this nightmare began, the air felt breathable again. Elena turned to Clara, tears glistening on her face. "You saved us." Clara shook her head, smiling softly. "No, he did." She looked at Leo, whose small hands were still moving, telling his mother he loved her. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the glass walls of the airport, Clara sat near Gate 12 again, the same place where it had all begun. Her apron was gone, her shift long forgotten, but her heart was full in a way it had never been before. Elena approached her one last time, Leo by her side. "We're leaving tonight. Canada, a new start." Clara smiled. "You'll be safe there." Elena hesitated, then hugged her tightly. "You didn't just help a deaf child today, you helped a mother believe again." When they walked away, Leo turned back, waving with a bright, innocent grin. Clara waved too, tears in her eyes. As their figures disappeared into the crowd, she whispered to herself, "Maybe kindness really can change the world, one small act at a time." And for the first time, she believed it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and tell me if you like this story. Would you like me to generate a thumbnail prompt for Whisk based on this story?